stay out of the woods. Sat at her side, I watched the heart monitor pulse weaker and weaker as my mother's life faded, her final sigh coming to an end as she breathed her last. Tears rolled down my cheeks, and I squeezed her hand one final time. My body was numb, mind fogged with memories of her life, taking me and my siblings to Six Flags, eyes betraying her smile, as she watched our reactions in the rearview mirror when we realized where we were going. How she hugged me when she finally got custody from Dad, and I got to see her for the first time in months. Welcoming me and my friends inside with hot chocolate, after a long play in the snow, telling us to leave our boots outside. I broke down, the feeling of loss that had been building from the moment she collapsed from a stroke a week ago, finally escaping the vault of my soul. My hand pressed against my temple, as a pain began to build there, my vision going blurry for a moment. "Where am I? Where's Mom?" I asked, head swiveling around, surveying the restaurant I was in as my headache continued to bloom and spread. "What are you talking about?" Charlotte asked, reaching her hand out to squeeze mine. "Are you okay? Maybe we should take you to a hospital." We were on our fourth date again, we had just been bowling, and now we were at a restaurant. "No, I'm okay." "What were you saying?" I asked, and she eyed me nervously, watching my face and biting her lip with concern, before deciding I must be okay. "I was asking about the next few chapters of your book. It's been almost a month since I've heard anything from you, or seen any of your writing. We're getting nervous," Charlotte said, speaking in the voice of John, my publishing manager. I set the packet down on John's desk, eagerly watching him pick it up, and flip through the pages. "All right, I'll take a look at this, but please, keep me updated. No more long silences." Her heart monitor was silent, and I stared down at her, squeezing her hand gently, rubbing my thumb in circles on her wrinkled dry skin. Something felt wrong. She was my mother, she had died just before my eyes. Didn't I cry? Or shouldn't I? I thought I had cried, but now I felt no tears. My hand shot to my forehead, pressing against my temples and rubbing, as the headache came back in pulsing pounding waves. I let out a groan of agony, and felt a hand on my cheek. Unlike my mother's, this hand was soft and warm, and it lifted my head to face her. "You don't look so good, we should get you some help." Charlotte's innocent hazel eyes, resting just below walnut brown bangs, stared into mine with sincerity, and for a moment, I smiled. But that quickly fell away as I wondered why she was touching me, being so kind. I had loved her once, hadn't I? Now she sat here before me during our best date, and I felt bored, disinterested. The slam of the packet hitting the desk ripped me from my thoughts. "This is sick. The story is too dark. How are we supposed to sell this? Who would read something like this?" John was angry, I think. I couldn't focus on his words. I was too distracted thinking about how much this had hurt me once before. "You need to rewrite these chapters or this book isn't going to make the shelves." Rewrite them? I had before, but now I couldn't be bothered to try. Whatever had driven me to write the book before was gone. "Jesus, you don't even care, do you? You need help." "What? Do you need help?" the nurse asked, placing a hand on my shoulder as I stood looking down at the woman in the bed. She was pale. Freckles dotting her face like embers, coming from her fire-red hair, just like mine. She seemed so familiar. I must have seen her somewhere before, maybe at the coffee shop I worked at, or someone I'd seen in passing on the street. "Who was she?" I asked, and the nurse's brow wrinkled with concern. "She's your mother. Are you feeling okay? You need help." "I do?" "Yeah, you need help." "Help me," I cried out, the cold tree bark against my back, digging into my skin and tearing my shirt, leaving long scratches down my body. My hands gripped the wrist of the appendage that held my throat, and my legs swung and kicked at its black bony torso, but the thing didn't budge. I could only see out of my left eye. My right had been pushed down into its socket by the long tube that forced its way past into my skull. I choked on my words, trying to cry for help again, as its claws dug into my skin. "I know you put a lot of work into this book, but we just can't justify working with you anymore. Your initial idea was very good, but you fumbled the delivery, and it just makes sense to stick to our better prospects. I'm sorry, but we have to let you go," John said firmly from behind his desk. The first time he'd said this, I begged, humiliated myself further and groveled, making promises and offering to take lower royalties for another chance. But now I couldn't even remember what the book was about, or why I cared so much about it to begin with. John spoke up again from behind his desk, a little different now, his voice almost sinister. "It was a pleasure to meet you." I felt its long worm-like tongue slither past my eye, causing it to roll down and out of alignment, as the thing pulled on my skin and brain, bile rising into my throat from the sick sensation. The thing took a step back, and I fell to the floor, as it released my bleeding neck and dropped onto all fours. It was covered in thick black fur, with gray speckles down its sides. The fur on its spine stood up straighter and longer than the rest, and its forelimbs all had 4 digits, that looked perfect for gripping its prey. Gripping me. Behind it swung a long furry tail, the end a tuft of gray fur. Its face was hairless, a long narrow skull covered in wrinkly pink skin, that ended in a short trunk, where its tongue retracted into. Its beady black eyes stared at me for a few moments, before it walked past, vanishing into the woods. My hand rose to feel my right eye, now crooked and pointing lower than the other, a gap above it where the tongue had slid past, oozing blood. I sighed and stood up, walking away. I don't know what it did to me, but it took something. My mind is a foggy mess, and I can hardly remember my own name. I thought writing this might help me feel something again, or straighten out my memories, but it hasn't. I guess I'll post this, maybe it'll help one of you. Stay out of the woods.